Welcome, Gunrunner.
Every year I like to make a Christmas themed video. It's become a bit of a ritual on the channel now. Previously I've looked at my 12 games of Christmas, my 5 consoles of Christmas, and even a video looking at early 8-bit skiing games. I had a few different ideas of what to do this year, but ultimately felt that this one fitted really well, with the current theme of short documentaries looking at failed consoles on my channel. In the video game industry, like any retail focused industry in fact, Christmas is hugely important. It's the period when you make the largest percentage of your sales, and it's been proven that the seasonal sales period can make or break a company. More games consoles have been launched in the months before Christmas than any other time of the year, and there's a very good reason for that, as I've already alluded to. Successful systems like the Atari 2600, PC Engine, Sony PlayStation and Sega Mega Drive were all released just in time to cash in on Crimbo and benefited greatly from it. But there were also plenty of systems that didn't, and putting aside Christmas failures like the Commodore 64 game system, Atari 5200, MB Vectrex and Sega 32X, we also have a bunch of machines that missed their Yuletide release completely and suffered pretty catastrophic failure because of it, and that's what we're going to be looking at here. So without further ado, it's time to grab a mince pie and sip your hot chocolate as I look at 5 consoles that failed to launch in time for Christmas.
All over Britain there are little green lights that say, Go!
Go! Go!
That say, get involved.
Oh, what a start!
Get competitive online and take on the world. And your dad. Get active at home, with mates, or on your own.
Looking good.
Go back to your roots. Get team spirit. Come on, catch up. This is TV at your demand. This is family fun for everyone. So experience the skill, the precision, the hand-to-eye coordination. Young or old, just get involved. And get yourself a Wii.
I'm going to start with one of the most recent examples of this issue, and the console that got us lazy gamers off the sofa and jumping around the living room like Looney Tunes characters, the Nintendo Wii. After the relative failure of the GameCube, Nintendo needed to come up with something radically different, and the Wii was certainly it. Although the actual hardware inside was barely an upgrade on the Cube, the way you used the console couldn't have been more radically different. The arrival of motion controls in the innovative Wiimote saw Nintendo garner a whole new audience away from the stereotypical gamer. Everyone wanted a Wii, from your kids to your granny. This was the new must-have item for your living room. Launched in North America on the 19th of November 2006, the European launch was penciled in for just under a month later, making sure it was out just in time for Christmas. The problem was that you can't launch a console if you don't have any stock, and Nintendo either grossly underestimated how many people wanted a Wii, or they were just plain incompetent in getting them out to stores, because nobody could actually buy one. Those that did were quickly flipping them on eBay for up to 4 times the price, and people were happy to pay those insane prices too. That's how much people wanted one. Luckily for Nintendo though, these stock shortages didn't end up doing them any long-term harm, as the Wii would go on to dominate its generation, remaining top of everyone's most wanted list going into the following year. Well, when it came to sales of the console anyway, as the software attach rate was less than impressive, it has to be said. But it cannot be argued that the Wii very much put Nintendo right back into the spotlight. Of course, there are those who will point to Nintendo's record of creating intentional stock shortages themselves to build up hype and hysteria around their products. NES Mini anyone? From Nintendo to their once great rival Sega, as it's their first truly successful console, the Master System, that takes the next place on our list. Or should I say the European Master System in particular. I know what you're all saying, the SMS was huge in Europe, wasn't it? And yes, you'd be right, it was, but that was in spite of a seriously bungled launch that Sega's rivals very much failed to capitalise on. Rewind back to 1986 and Sega had signed a deal with several leading European distributors to launch the product on their behalf, including Master Games in France, Areola Soft in Germany, and everyone's budget game favourites, Mastertronic in the UK. A huge advertising campaign was started to make the Master System the must-have games machine that Christmas. But due to some epic incompetency by Sega, they failed to actually hand over any inventory at all to their European distributors until Boxing Day. This resulted not just in many angry parents who couldn't purchase the top item on their children's list, but also caused wide-scale backlash from retailers demanding compensation. These troubles ended up putting both Master Games and Mastertronic into bankruptcy due to the financial mess they had been left in thanks to all those lost sales. Thankfully, eccentric British balloon-riding billionaire Richard Branson stepped forward to save both Master Games and Mastertronic, merging them into his existing company, Virgin Games. From here, the Master System went from strength to strength, and soon became the industry leader across Western Europe. In fact, Sega was so impressed by the way Virgin Games marketed the console in this part of the globe, that they actually ended up buying the whole company. I know, the Acorn Electron isn't a console, but I just couldn't leave this story out, because it almost defies belief, and when I think of botched Christmas launches, it's always the first one that springs to mind. The story begins with the Electron's brother, the BBC Micro, the computer that put Acorn on the map, after being chosen over the ZX Spectrum for the British Broadcasting Corporation's computer literacy programme. But as great as the Beeb was, there was always one very big issue that meant it never had anywhere near the same level of success in homes as it had in schools: the price. At twice the cost of the Specky, for the most basic model, it was well beyond the reach of most households, and Acorn set to work on creating a lower cost alternative. They wanted this new computer to keep a high level of compatibility with the BBC Micro, so they could use the educational angle to help promote it, and still be seen as a proper computer. So it was decided from day one that it would feature a proper keyboard, unlike the awful dead flesh keys of the Spectrum, and a good level of expandability. So they needed to find other ways to save on the high cost of the hardware, and it was decided that a greatly reduced chipset was the answer. Acorn's engineers set about creating a completely new chipset that they claimed would reduce the count from the 102 chips on the BBC Micro's motherboard to just 14. With most of the functionality on a single 2400 gate uncommitted logic array, better known as a ULA. Acorn's boss, Chris Curry, who was famously immortalised by Martin Freeman in the excellent movie The Micromen, claimed the new computer would be ready for Christmas 1982, but as that crucial sales period came and went, people started to realise something was wrong. Acorn tried to temper the concerns of consumers and distributors alike by announcing a new March 1983 date, but that soon slipped to June, and Acorn were in real trouble. All these delays were caused by complications with the design and manufacturing of the new ULA, which now didn't seem like such a clever idea. As June arrived, Acorn made more excuses, as they said it would make more sense to launch the Electron at the Acorn User Exhibition in August 1983. For once, Acorn kept their promise, as the new machine was indeed launched at the aforementioned event. The company expected to ship the Electron before Christmas at the previously promised £199 price point, and predicted that they would sell 100,000 units by the end of the Xmas period. First reviews of the 8-bit computer were also extremely positive, with it being seen as a much better option than its low-cost rivals, including the likes of the Commodore VIC-20, Sinclair ZX Spectrum and Dragon 32. As October 1983 came around, Acorn had received orders for more than 150,000 units, but had production targets of only 25,000 a month before Christmas, meaning that the existing backlog would take more than 6 months to fulfill. It soon became clear that their Malaysian manufacturer just wasn't up to the job of producing the needed number of Electrons, and problems persisted with reproducing the new ULA. As Christmas rolled around, stock was so thin on the ground that leading UK computer retailer WH Smith's reported only 2 of their London branches actually had any stock at all. Christmas 1983 came and went, with Acorn sitting on back orders of over 250,000 units, and Chris Curry could only look on in envy as his former boss and now great rival Sir Clive Sinclair took control of the UK computer market, with the ZX Spectrum dominating sales. Acorn finally managed to increase production going into 1984. However, the British home computer market had greatly weakened through a mix of oversaturation and the promise of new, more powerful machines around the corner. Acorn's Christmas 1984 sales were well below expectations, and by March 1985 the company had reduced the Electron's price to just £129. With the company's unsuccessful expansion into the United States completely abandoned, Acorn's financial situation had deteriorated so badly that Italian electronics company Olivetti offered to rescue the company by taking a 49.3% ownership stake. Renewed efforts were made to help sell the machine, bundling it with Acorn's own expansions and software, such as one package that added the +1 expansion, joysticks, and a ROM cartridge to the base machine for a total price of £219. But these did little to improve its fortunes, and by the end of the year, the Electron would be found in clearance sales for less than £100. Of course, Acorn would go on to bigger and better things with the development of the 32-bit Archimedes computer and the industry-changing ARM chip, but the Electron remained a huge stain on their legacy that had cost the company dearly. It has to be the only system to fail at Christmas, not just once or even twice, but 3 times. Founded as the Radio Corporation of America in 1919, RCA is an electronics company with a rich history and already had a big foothold in people's homes as the video game revolution arrived at the end of the 1970s. So after seeing the rise of arcades and the home success of Atari's standalone Pong console, it seemed like a natural move to transfer their expertise and market power into this sector too. However, RCA's engineers were adamant that they could go one better than Atari and create a clever new system that could play more than one game by utilising what would become known as ROM cartridges. Christened the Studio II, there was never a Studio 1 if you were wondering, with the name of the console said to have been inspired by legendary nightclub Studio 54. RCA penciled in an October 1976 release date, making it available just in time for the crucial Christmas sales period. But what seemed like a good idea at RCA soon turned into a bit of a nightmare, as it soon became clear the company's engineers just weren't up to the task. Their team had no experience of creating either video games or the hardware needed to play them, unlike Atari's, and development of the Studio 2 was less than smooth. It eventually limped onto the market in January 1977, completely missing that uber important Christmas, for a price of $150, which is over $600 adjusted for inflation. But this was just the start of the system's problems, as the story of the Studio 2 presents a veritable catalogue of disasters. Much delayed release date meant that it was beaten to market by the Channel F from big electronics rivals Fairchild, which made the Studio 2 look laughably dated before it even got going. This is because RCA's system only had low-resolution black and white graphics, minimal sound, and had keypad-like controls that were built into the main unit, a hangover from it copying the design of Atari's standalone Pong console. Meanwhile, the Channel F with its colour graphics and separate controllers was only $20 more expensive, making it an absolute no-brainer. Fairchild not only stole RCA's sales from them, but also ripped away the moniker of producing the world's first proper games console too, sealing their place in history. Around 8 months later, the final nail was hammered into the Studio 2's coffin as the Atari video computer system arrived on the market. And we all know what happened there. RCA discontinued their console just a year later with sales of around 50,000 units, and it was quickly forgotten. We've had consoles from Sega and Nintendo, and now it's time to look at a system from the other big name from the 1980s and early 90s, and perhaps the most industry-defining botch launch of all time, one that would ultimately contribute to the once great company's dramatic downfall and exit from a market it had almost single-handedly built. Atari was slow to react to the arrival of new 16-bit consoles back at the end of the 80s, but in 1990 they announced that they were going to release a new 32-bit console called the Panther the following year, claiming this new hardware would wipe the floor with the Sega Mega Drive, PC Engine and Super Nintendo. Not long after this announcement, Atari also revealed that another new console would follow it a couple of years later based on 64-bit technology, called the Jaguar. But it soon became apparent that development of the Jaguar, which was being designed in the UK by ex-Sinclair Research Bod's Flare Technology, was progressing at a very rapid rate, and the release of the Panther was promptly cancelled, just as development kits were arriving with software houses. The first problem was that Flare were hitting snags with designing and debugging the Jaguar's custom chipset. This meant that several compromises had to be made with the design to get it ready for manufacturing. This delayed the console beyond the hoped 1992 release date and well into 1993. Come the turn of that year, and cash-strapped Atari couldn't wait any longer. They had to get the Jaguar to market and forego the much-needed bug fixes. But the next problem was that Atari no longer had any manufacturing at all, having sold all their existing plants in Hong Kong and Taiwan to raise cash to help keep the company afloat. So they turned to the creators of the PC, IBM, for help. They seemed like a perfect fit. They were American, so Atari could pull the patriotic angle, they knew how to build computers, and had a rich manufacturing history. The problem was that they had never built a games console before, let alone one with advanced custom processors and many non-standard parts. IBM's disastrous handling of the Jaguar production ended up costing Atari dearly. The planned European launch of the Jaguar in 1993 had to be almost completely cancelled despite Atari's division there claiming pre-orders of over 2 million units, with only 2,000 PAL consoles ever being produced for an event at Hamley's historic toy store in London. The Jaguars, produced for both the New York and Californian test markets in America, sold out almost immediately, and then nothing. Atari had no more stock, and didn't know when more was coming. IBM were in meltdown, distributors were losing faith, and consumers were starting to turn their eyes to the recently announced Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation. By the time production caught up with Atari's requirements in the summer of 1994, it was all too late. Nobody wanted a Jaguar anymore. It was old news, and Atari had pretty much destroyed any good faith they had with retailers and distributors. Dismal sales of just 225,000 caused Atari to exit the console market just 2 years later, and wonder just what could have been had they been able to get their act together back in 1992 when they still meant something.
Some of you believe your system is the most advanced in the universe. Let's review the numbers. Sega Genesis is 16 bits. 3DO is 32 bits. The Atari Jaguar is 64 bits. Which is more advanced? Clifford! 16 and 32 are less than 64. Still with 64 bits, 3D graphics, real-world animation, and lightning speed that you can only get with Jaguar. Which is more advanced? Clifford!
Can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!
And that rounds up my look at 5 consoles that failed to launch for Christmas. Can you think of any other systems that completely missed the seasonal boat and sealed their fate with it? Or do you have any personal stories about these Yuletide disasters? I always love to hear the thoughts and views of my audience, so please get typing in that comment section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons who continue to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons and YouTube backers in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Grady Haynes, Mitchell Valentino, Seth A. Robinson, Carl Olsen, Dos Gamerman, Sonic Mania 999, Paul Daniel, Andrew McKay, Retro Resolution, Matt Standish, James Taylor, Trogdor the Burninator, 8-Bit Guy, and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now. You can get access to extra content, including downloads, creative insights, and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.